is everybody doing? Listen, I want to thank everybody for all the birthday wishes last week. And for allowing me to just have a week to be me, to be me. Just lay around and read and not have to worry about nothing. So I appreciate it, and I said thank you to everybody in the Patreon show, but I want to make sure that YouTube gets some love too, even though I'm over there more than here. Love, love, love. Listen, we not even gonna take no whole long time today to talk about what we gotta talk about. We ain't gotta do all that. It's just sometimes it's just unnecessary. And I don't want to be unnecessary. I don't want to unnecessarily take advantage of somebody's time. So, we just have to come full circle though. Because remember what I always talk about. If you can't measure it, it don't matter. So you got to be able to measure stuff. You got to be able to come in and measure this and put a teaspoon here and a little dollop here and all that kind. You got to be able to do it. You got to be able to measure it. That means you got to be able to go back and look at where we were then and where we are now and who was right and who's wrong and how it happened and who was on first and who was on second and who was on third and why they ran and who's playing shortstop. Okay? So that's what we're doing. Now, I know some of you know that was my week off when Kamala Harris was going around with all of the Negro Boule. I want all of the Pan-Africanists to understand that this is not no kind of thing that we just talk about. Oh, they just talk about we talk about ADOS politicians more than we talk about anybody in terms of criticizing how they do what they do. Look at here, Howard University's president. What are you doing in the Ghana, child, smiling with all them teeth? So listen. So we have to just hit something very crucial. Now she was over there, and they was talking about. They had the second gentleman talking about they was gonna have a basketball, host some kind of basketball junior clinic, NBA clinic in Ghana. That's very interesting since I spoke a little bit about LSU yesterday. So that's Monday. So that's very interesting. So it was a lot of interesting things. They showed some clips and a lot of interesting things were happening, right? But this was probably the thing this thing right here, that's kind of what I wanted to come back to. This is what I want to come back to. Vice President Kamala Harris put up something. They said how it started, how it's going. And, there's a backstory to that story of why she was there in that African country. During that moment, what was that at Zambia? Well, and during that moment and what that says, right? There's a story there. And there's a story there of opportunity. There's a story there of lineage. And there's a story there that says ADOS was right all along. Well, what do you mean? Well, let's just go back. Like I said, let's go back to what this whole conversation, part of it was about Kamala, was it not? Part of this whole session was about Kamala, and we never said Kamala was not black. We never said that. We said that she is not ADOS. And actually, it is very disrespectful to both sides of her family, the Jamaican side, which comes from slavery, but is not American descendants of slavery, as in the United States of America, and her Indian side, to just try to place her in this thing which she does not belong. That's not saying she's not black. That's just saying that is a specific lineage, background, heritage. ADOS is a specific lineage, background, heritage. And when you look at where she is, when you look at where she was, and she said how it is, how it was going and how it's going now, that gives you a window into one side of her family. And it comes back all the way back to ADOS and says, they were right. Those little Negroes who were talking about, we have a right. They said that they have a right to define themselves, right? Isn't that what we said? We have a right to define ourselves and who we are. You can go to Ghana and you can talk about people being snatched or whatever. I know nobody's ready to get honest with that conversation. But what we know is that we were right. So let me just read you a little bit. For those of you all who haven't looked at none of her trip or whatever, and this is just, like I said, we probably not going to be here long. I just want to go back to where we were because a lot has happened. And I think there are a lot of people now, if they look at it, they'll say, yeah, they were right. We were wrong. You got to start admitting that. So Zambia. Vice President Kamala Harris may have traveled halfway around the world to reach this corner of Africa, but she was welcome as a daughter of our own country when she sat down with Zambia's leader. So we just give you a little bit of context. The visit, President, I don't want to try to be disrespectful of anybody's name, so I'm not going to try to pronounce it because somebody's going to say you pronounced it wrong, and I'm going to say you right now. So we ain't even going to get into it. Said was like a homecoming. It was a reference to a childhood trip to Zambia when Harris's grandfather worked here, but she heard similar refrains throughout a week-long trip that ended on Saturday. So she was welcomed very well, and her grandfather took her. There was this trip. Right now, you got to get into why did this trip? What was that all about? Although Africa remains a poor continent with almost half the population lacking access to electricity, Harris's itinerary was aimed at portraying it as young, dynamic, innovative, and primed for American business opportunities, particularly with leaders from the diaspora. You better watch that too, African countries. They're gonna prime you all right. They'll pick you dry. The most glamorous event was a state banquet at the Ghanaian presidential palace known as the Jubilee House, where Black American celebrities, business people, and civil rights activists gathered. Okay, that gives you the context. That gives you part of the context. Now, let's go back to how it started and how it's going, or whatever she was saying right there. Harris visits site of grandfather's old home in Zambia. Now, what was her Indian grandfather doing in Zambia, you might ask? What was, and then she visited there as a child. What was going on? And then ask yourself, how is this different from the American descendant of slavery experience? Because, let me come out of here for just 1 second, because one of the things that we have always said, we're gonna just go back a little bit. One of the things that we have always said is that these are different experiences. And the reason that we call ourselves American descendants of slavery is not because we're erasing, it's not because we're erasing Africa, just the same way we're not erasing any other ethnicity that we're a part of. We understand that. We're not going around saying ain't none of us of African descent. We're not delusional people. That's not what we're saying. We're tying ourselves to the institution of slavery because of the depravity of slavery and what it wrought and what we still experience in our lives, what we still experience in our wealth, what we still experience in our lack. That's why you have to explain this to people, because everybody done got out here. It's all kind of people who was invited to the California Reparations Task Force, who are now making all kind of videos about how and running and talking about how we can't do this and it ain't gonna work. Well, you have to ask the people who did the California Reparations Task Force why they elevated people who obviously were not on the side of lineage-based reparations. Why did you elevate these people? You had them on panels and talking and made them look like they were important when really they were nobodies. Y'all know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to elevate nobody by saying their name, but you know who I'm talking about, child. Now she throw panels with 6 people in the comments, and then the rest of them is ADOS talking about how this is not going to work, as if you are an expert on any kind of thing, documentation, statistician, nothing. You just there talking and you don't understand what it is. So when people come and lie on you, you gotta come and say what the truth is. It's just no way around it. I wish it was. The truth is Kamala can be Black and then have a very different experience and a very different heritage and a very different background, and we saw that on this trip. Okay, let's go to the next clip. Zambia. Vice President Kamala Harris paused Friday during a whirlwind diplomatic swing through Africa for something much more personal, a visit to the site of her maternal grandfather's home in Lusaka, where he lived as an Indian public servant in the 1960s. P.V. Gopalan, that's grandfather, right? Was working with the newly independent Zambia government 6 decades ago on refugee resettlement and lived at 16 Independence Avenue, where Harris visited as a little girl. That's where she was as a little girl when she took this photo. She was visiting him. That's where she was. So we get the context of that photo. Now, the one thing, before we even go to everything else, the one thing we can talk about or discuss, and I know for a lot of you this is review, but just stay with me for a little while, is that he was a professional. For those of you who, well, I don't understand. He was a professional. We were not professionals. For the most part. I'm not saying, don't get me to, well, we shouldn't have no black doctors. I'm not saying that we didn't. We did. But I'm saying that like we didn't have people who had elevated to the point to where if there was a refugee problem somewhere that they was going to be sent to take care of it. That's not where we were. And I'm going to show you just a little bit, just to give you a little bit more context. This is when you look at this particular time frame, right? Let me just show you. Let me just show you what this is before we get into it. How many live on how much? 1970 and 2016. So Kamala she was around 5 or 6 then. She was around 5 or 6 when she took the picture. Kamala's 58 now. So we throw it back. Let's just go to 1970, right? Let's throw it back. So this is when you talk about how many live on how much, there's whites, right? Now you see that green, you see that cluster. You see that cluster, right, and how it spreads out, right? Now I want you to Siri just be talking. I want you to go to blacks. And you see how it peaks all the way up to the bottom. It bunches up to it has a really high bunch in less than 25,000. You see how that happens? And then most people don't have a huge bunch at the very top. But do you see how that happens? And the thing with us, it stays that way over time. So we don't have the experience that Kamala is having in terms of having a granddaddy who was sent somewhere to deal with the refugee problem over there. And let me just give you a little bit more in terms of the backdrop, because this is whether we realize it or not, and whether we want to really talk about it or not. What we're seeing now is that, okay, y'all was right about the whole thing. Let's just revisit this. Let's just revisit this one time and see. For those who may not have been here or coming to it now, or whatever the case may be, we just want to have a little conversation about. There was never any reason for like old people say, all this fuss. There was never any reason to oppose ADOS unless you were up to something very duplicitous. There was never any reason to oppose ADOS unless you were up to something very nefarious. There was never any reason to oppose ADOS unless you thought that your particular group was better than ADOS, so that we didn't have to make any kind of claim and we did not have the right to define ourselves. That is the only way that you could have positioned yourself against ADOS, because this is Kamala Harris right here, and this is her family right here. You cannot erase this family. Two things can be true. Kamala Harris can be both black, we don't really like the term or whatever, but it is what it is. She can have African heritage, and she can also have these people as her family, which means you cannot erase these people from her experience. And when you look at her experience is more of an affluent immigrant experience than an ADOS experience. That was never a lie. That was never discriminatory. That was never any of the things that people said it was. And when she goes back there and she visits the little whatever the street or whatever she visits, you see what it is. But let's just go and just show how much time people have wasted our time that we were trying to do advocacy when they were saying we was xenophobic, we were this, do that. And it turns out that it was all lies. We ain't got to be here. We ain't got to be here for no long time. We just got to provide some clarity. That's part of what we do. You got to have some clarity. You got to understand what's going on right here. For a girl from Berkeley, about 5 years old, the setting must have been intoxicating. A bungalow surrounded by greenery and in a newly independent African capital where children ran outside to wave at the president's car as he drove past. This was a young Kamala Harris. This was where a young Kamala Harris spent time in the late 1960s at a house in Lusaka, Zambia, that belonged to her maternal grandfather, an Indian civil servant on assignment in an era of post-colonial ferment. Right? The Indian government had dispatched P.V. Gopalan to help Zambia manage an influx of refugees from Rhodesia, the former name of Zimbabwe, which had just declared independence from Britain. It was the capstone of a 4-decade career that began when Gopalan joined government service fresh out of college in the 1930s and the final years of British rule. Now, there's a lot in those last couple of sentences. Fresh out of college, civil service, right? Now, I don't know. I don't know when your grandparents were born or what they had, but most of our people in the 1930s were sharecroppers. They certainly were not in college or fresh out of college, and most of them didn't have kids that were fresh out of college. Certainly they were not on diplomatic missions. This is something that people of affluence were able to do that was not available to us. And the reason it was not available to us was because of slavery and what, ladies and gentlemen, a cruel disadvantage, discrimination, Reconstruction. Sharecropping wasn't nothing but slavery by another name. This is something, when you put that 1930s date on this and what he was doing and for how long he was doing it, you see that these are two different backgrounds. And when she goes back and says how it started versus what was happening, were you traveling? When you was 5 years old, I just want to know, were you doing international travel with your granddad? I'm not saying nobody was. I just want to show of hands of how many of you were and how many of you knew people who knew ADOS, right? Who were doing travel. International travel, going to stay at these places where their grandfather was on assignment, diplomacy, because we live in a country where we were not allowed to do such things. We had what you had, Ralph Bunche, whenever that was. But no, this is not this is you have to understand the things that influence somebody else's life, right? You have to understand. And what happens to us, we don't ever understand when we're being played. There's something going on, and I'm happy that ADOS is able to wake that up, because there's something. Remember I said the thing that people do with us is that they relate to us through loss or they relate to us through trauma, right? You either relate to me if I say, oh, I ain't got it. I ain't got the light bill. They treat me real bad. You say, oh, me either. I ain't got it. And or you say, what was this? I grew up as a little boy in Arkansas in a trailer park. Who was that? Bill Clinton. They don't relate to you on what you. They're never gonna relate to you. They don't relate to you on the fact that you like what's those little things, anime. They don't relate to you on what you want the future to look like for you. They relate to you on loss. So they gotta make, and if they don't relate to you on loss, they relate to you on culture, right? So if like, oh, well, she didn't really have, Kamala had a Stanford daddy and a scientist mama, so I can't really relate to her on loss like that. Like Obama could at least say he couldn't catch a cab. I can't even Kamala, could you catch a cab? You could always catch a cab. Oh, because she's a woman, she could catch a cab. So I can't, oh my God. So how do I relate to these Negroes if I can't relate on loss? Because that's normally what you do. You find a day where you say you was hungry and he say, me too. And we say, he understand. He like cornbread and black eyed peas. So if you can't relate on loss or trauma, you relate on culture. And culture was Kamala saying, I went to Howard University. Culture was Kamala saying, I'm an AKA. That was culture. You could not relate to us on loss or trauma. You relate to us on culture, and that is manipulation. Now, manipulation happens all the time in politics, so I'm not saying no thing about it. I'm not saying that she's the only person to manipulate us. I'm just saying that when you look back, this was manipulation. This woman has far less in common with us than she does have in common with us, right? There are even differences in terms of what it means to be Jamaican and come from slavery there and what it means to be here. And I don't know where people come from in Jamaica, but I'm saying there are still differences. There are still cultural differences. America is a different kind of monster. So, and I'm not saying that Jamaican slaves were not mistreated. My God, people will take stuff all out of context. What I'm saying is, with politicians, you have to find relatability. Relatability is important. And as we move throughout this movement, and I'm going to get back to this article in a second, because this movement goes far beyond this. Like, even after reparations, you still have to do politics, because you got to maintain what you got and grow it. Watch how politicians manage relatability. That's what I'm saying. Watch how politicians manage their relatability to ADOS. Don't try to relate to me with loss. No. Relate to me through an agenda. Relate to me through a transformative black agenda and through reparations. Do not relate to me through this, because this is a problem. And that's what Kamala did. She was able to say ski-wee, and she was able to kind of dance off beat. when she was coming to the thing, she was able to, and she wasn't on the, what was she on, the ones and the threes or the fours? She wasn't on the right beat, child. She was, and that was the relatability. But her background, even though she went to Howard, doesn't match how she related to us. So let me just keep going with this article. This is a while ago. This is when Kamala was campaigning to be president. So when you this article, I think I brought this article up a while back, but when you go and see her saying, hey, my grandfather was here, and hey, I don't have any problem with what she did. I'm saying it makes the case while we were always right. That's all I'm saying. I'm not. She can go there and she can do whatever she want to do. I'm not saying she can't. As she campaigns for the Democratic presidential nomination, Harris often invokes her late mother, Sheila, a diminutive and dauntless breast cancer researcher, scientist. That's what she was. It wasn't just scientist. Who taught Kamala and her younger sister Maya to strive for excellence and lift others up. These principles Shyamala inherited from Gopalan and her mother Rajam. In 1958, she surprised them by applying for a master's program at UC Berkeley, a campus they had never heard of. Now, this is 1958, and Kamala Harris's mother is applying to Berkeley. 1958, and she is going to Berkeley. Now, as citizens of the United States who built this country, we were not saying, hey, mom and dad, I'm going to Berkeley. Have you all ever heard of it? We were still trying to assimilate into these colleges, right? Most of our doctors and lawyers came out of HBCUs and still do. We were still trying to be American when people from other countries were coming and saying, I'm going to Berkeley. Berkeley, did you hear me, darling? Berkeley. Oh, I'm going to be amongst the best of the best. I know you may not have heard of it, but I'm going there. This is elite stuff. This is elite stuff that's passed down. Right? Passed down status, passed down careers. That's not to say her people are any bad people. They're just saying that these people come from affluent immigrants. That's what she descends from. That's how we're saying, I'm going to Berkeley. That's how we're saying, darling. Let's go to the next one. It sounds like a classic immigrant tale. You see, it sounds like, and the Times said it, it sounds like a classic immigrant tale. But Harris's grandparents' broad-minded values were uncommon for the India of that time. The family legacy doesn't shine through in Harris's speeches on the campaign trail, where she struggled to break into the top tier. Yes, they didn't come through because she wasn't campaigning as she decided on a different identity. Kamala said, listen, Biden needs black people to win. That is the identity that I have to choose. So I am not going to stand on what I am. She seldom delves into her Indian heritage, reflecting a broader reticence to share personal stories beyond the handful of well-worn anecdotes. Gopalan was a Brahmin, part of a privileged elite in Hinduism's ancient caste hierarchy. In post-independence India, convention destined Brahmin offspring for arranged marriages and comfortable careers in academia, government service, or the priesthood if they were men. Women were not expected to work at all. How many of y'all had mamas who wasn't expected to work at all? Huh? Arranged marriages? Did you come from a top caste? We've talked about this. You just got to go back and do it. You just have to go back because things look different at a different time. That's the reason you revisit stuff, because stuff looks when she goes back and she says like she didn't like during the campaign. Kamala wasn't doing all this, going back to this rock or whatever, because the identity was she was anchoring an identity in a falsehood that she was ADOS. Not that she was black. We never said Kamala wasn't black. Claim whatever you want to claim. We never said that. But she was anchoring herself in Howard University, HBCU, ski wee wee. She was not saying, hey, I was here as a child. And which causes us to ask the questions, well, what were you doing there as a child? How did you get there as a child? Right? These were not, and when we tried to ask these questions in 2019, people said you're just xenophobic. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You're trying to define what blackness is. Well, no. I've never defined what blackness is. I don't. That's not my lane. We never tried to define what blackness is, and you gotta go back because that's not what we did. You can call yourself blackity black. You can be blackity black. You can be blacker than black. We don't care. We have just said, hey, allow us to define ourselves by the thing that most influences our lives right now. And the thing that influences our lives right is what we came from. The thing that influences our life is slavery and how it tied us and fastened us to the bottom and won't let go. That's the thing that influenced our life, this institution of slavery. We're not talking about whether or not you want to call your ancestor a slave. At the OMB, we had people calling, I'm my ancestor. I don't want to call him no slave, and I don't think we should. That's a derogatory term. That's what they were. And it's not our fault that they were slaves. It is the fault and the shame of the enslaver. How are you taking on the shame of the enslaver? What's wrong with you that you take on somebody else's shame? What's wrong with you? You be an angel in the world, you take on the shame of a devil. That's what he did to him. And it was an institution upheld by these United States of America for years. And every time we tried to make it right, this country stood in the way. This country would not protect us. This country would not enforce laws. This country put forth unfunded mandates, and this country still has not paid reparations. So yes, slavery mattered, and everything that came out of slavery matters, and that's why we talk about it. We don't talk about it just to call nobody a slave. What is wrong with you? This is Kamala. She was anchoring something. Her relational point to Adolf was very different, but now that she got elected and is probably going to do re-election, she can do things more freely. Now you get to see more clues. Now you get to see a little more of what's going on. Okay, I didn't see this before. Now they have to put some time between. Sometimes you just got to be patient and let me put some time between here and there. When people say, well, you trying to tell her she's not black. Let me put some time. Well, I can't believe we're trying to decide who's black enough. Let me put a little time in between that, because I told y'all in 2010, Obama's problem was that he wasn't African American. I didn't have a language for Adolf then, but I said that in 2010. It's 2023. Let me come on back to it and say it one more again, because Kamala was the next example for it. Okay, so let's just round it back up. So let's get to the end of this article real quick, so we can get to the end, because we got one more thing to talk about, and it won't take but 2 minutes. When Shyamala left to study nutrition and endocrinology, did your parents go study endocrinology? And what was this, the 50s? Child. Eventually earning a PhD, most Indian households didn't have phone lines. Let me come out of here for 1 second and say one thing. Do y'all remember when affirmative action was white, how they talked about how we didn't even get included in the New Deal, because the New Deal, a lot of us got excluded because the New Deal, most of us were field hands and maids, people who worked on sharecropper farms and farms were not eligible, were written out of the New Deal in so many words. So we got written out of the New Deal because our people did, our ancestors did, because they were field workers and maids. This woman is finna go study endocrinology and nutrition at an elite American institution. You have to just pump your brakes at that point and say these people are not us and we are not them. It doesn't mean you discriminate against them or whatever. We're not saying that. We're just kind of pointing out fact. Right, so let's go back. They didn't have phone lines. The family stayed in touch through letters, handwritten, lightweight, pale blue stationery known as aerograms, and that took about 2 weeks to travel between India and California. There was writing back and forth when she was at Berkeley, and they didn't have the phone, so they was using the letters and all that kind of stuff. Donald Harris wasn't race wasn't that's her father an issue for Shamala's parents. B said, but the fact that she didn't marry in India might have upset them, and the fact that it was someone they didn't meet. No one from the family attended the wedding, but B said that was because of financial reasons. He had just gone off to study in Britain and money at home was tight. So they everywhere. That y'all he was over the granddaddy was over there in Africa. He over there in Britain. She in America. Oh, they everywhere. Must be nice though. I gotta say, it must be nice. A few years later, Shamala and Donald brought their daughters to Zambia. Kamala would have been 4 or 5 years old. Maya, 2 years younger, was still sleeping in a crib. The young Kamala was oblivious to the intrigue swirling around her, with Gopalan's government-issued car whisking him to meetings with Zambian officials and diplomats dropping by for visits. What she remembers is the soil of Lusaka with rich copper which glowed a fiery red. I mean, in some ways, honestly, you can say that like there's a nice tie here, a tie in here to Africa before there was ever a tie to ADOS in this country, right? And just because of caste, like it's obvious. Like people come in and say, well, you know, the biggest miscalculation. I'm take this away from Kamala right now. The biggest miscalculation that we ever made as ADOS people or politicians or whatever is that an affluent immigrant having melanin would be enough to make them an ally to you. Affluent people tend to kind of come together with affluent people. That's why Kamala's father and mother came together. These were both affluent immigrants. They had a lot in common. They didn't come together because they were both brown people, because one was Jamaican and one was Indian. He was at Stanford, her father, and her mother had been to Berkeley and was a scientist. I think he studied economics, right? He got a PhD or something. He was at Stanford. These were people of affluence coming together. And one of the biggest miscalculations that we ever made was that the thing that binds people is melanin, right? As opposed to some kind of hierarchy, some kind of economic hierarchy, a background that binds them to affluence, like coming from a Brahmin or whatever the case may be, or being affluent in Jamaica. That is something that binds people in a way, and it pushes them away from people who come from slavery. And we don't ever want to talk about that. We don't ever want to talk about it. We just talk about Kamala, she a sister girl, or whatever the case may be. There are people who go to Howard who when I talked about there are not many of us. There are some who I had a mama and a daddy who went to Howard, and they had a mama and a daddy who went to Spelman or Morehouse or whatever. They were here when the school was founded, right? That exists, and none of us know why Kamala. We only know what he told us too about why there was nobody at the wedding. That's all we know. Why Kamala's family? That's all we know. You know, what when her parents did whatever. We don't know. We don't know what we're told. The truth is probably somewhere else. But there is no, these two people got married. Understand that these two people, Kamala Harris's mom and dad, came into a country that was overwhelmingly ADOS, right? And they found each other. They didn't find no ADOS people to marry. They found each other. Kamala's Indian mother found, who was a scientist, found a Jamaican man who was at Stanford. These two elite affluent immigrants found each other because that was the commonality and that was the tie that binds. It's not complicated. You can see it in the relationship. That's all we're saying. That's all we're saying. And that's all we have ever said. All we have ever said, understand. All we have ever said is that her being at Howard does not make her ADOS. And we understand what she tried to do, because people start thinking about this stuff. I've said this before. People start thinking about this stuff early. Oh, I tell you what I'm gonna do. I knew a guy one time who said he was gonna run for president. Child, people start thinking about what they gonna do with their life and how they gonna do it and who they gonna manipulate it in order to do it. Right? And she might have, listen, even if you give Kamala the benefit of the doubt, she might have found some affinity, right? In ADOSness in terms of the school and being around a certain kind of people. I'm not saying that that's not the case. That doesn't change who she is. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with being an affluent immigrant or coming from them. That just means that when you deal with us, and I'll leave it here, that just means that when you deal with us, you have to deal with us as an affluent, as a person who is the child of affluent immigrants, which means you don't know us. That means you only know what we told you. If listen, I can grow up all day I could be around Kamala. Let's say I was around Kamala since I was 10. I still don't know what it means to be an affluent immigrant. I still don't know what it means to have a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. I do not know. She don't know us. And so instead of trying to have that entryway where you pretend to know us, where you pretend to have some kind of affinity, whether it's because you remember Bill Clinton told Donna Brazile, I like black-eyed peas, and she said he's one of us. Whether it's that or whether it's coming in through I'm just like you, and yeah, we go through it, and these white people, man, I tell you, I'm brown too. Don't come especially if you're a politician. That is not your entryway to me. Your entryway to me is, what does this agenda look like that you got? Let's talk about it. Don't mean you ain't black. Don't mean I can't like you as a person. It don't mean you any less black or I'm more black. Ain't nobody talking about who's black or not. We just talking about what your entryway needs to be and how blackness is not ADOSness. The same way there is no flat blackness. People have a different lineage, a different heritage, and whether you are Jamaican, whether you Haitian, Ghanaian, Zimbabwean, Zambian, South African, these are all different, very different people with different backgrounds. There can be some similarities, there can be some overlap, but there cannot be sameness. And this whole thing became controversial. This whole ADOS movement became controversial only because there were people who sought to deny us the right to have agency in what we're called and how we identify. They thought they had a right to tell us who to be and how to be it and who to let in and how to let them in. And this whole movement has said, no, you don't get to do that. You get to do that for whoever you are. You get to do that for your group. And I don't care if you are a journalist. I don't care who you are. You don't get to tell me who I am. You don't get to tell me what my name is. And you don't get to tell me that I can't do X, Y, and Z. This movement has pushed back against a whole idea of blackness that has sought to diminish us and diminish our history and cobble us together with groups that we have nothing in common with. And we are here. We will still, I wish I had the tweets from people. I wish I had a tweet from people back in like 2016 talking about I give this movement a year. It can't last more than a year. I'll give Yvette a year on this grift. It's 2023, boo boo. Are you still giving me a year? I think it was the man who wore that real big pillow. What is he? Ghetto intellectual? Wasn't it him that said we give you a year or something like that? We give you a year. You goofy goof. You goofy goof. My goodness. And I just want to say that's how we got here. We only got here because people want to diminish us and tell us what we can. Now they can call themselves anything, but we just get to be black, and because that's an entryway for everybody, right? Just go there and be with the Negroes, and they don't care. They'll let anybody in. They'll let a pit bull can come in and say I'm just like you. We'll be like, he seemed kind of cool. But he's still a pit, and I don't care for pits. But no. He's not a person, and he's certainly like, well, he got a hat on. What are y'all doing? So we just this move towards self-definition that was to benefit us, and it really didn't benefit anybody but us. That was a problem because we are intended to be the doormat for everybody who wants to come here and do whatever. And we've just kind of said, we're just kind of not doing that anymore. And that's really what kicked up dust. It wasn't us. We didn't do anything. Nothing wrong. Now, let me just say one other thing really quickly before I close out. I just got to say something about this. And I ain't got... Oh, my goodness. Let me just say, I got to say... The child says she's going to run for... Sheila Jackson Lee says she's running for mayor. Now... Let me just say... Some of y'all are crazy. I don't mean no disrespect, but some of y'all are crazy as a Fruit Loop. Some of y'all are, just nutty as a cashew bar. Because when I said, how many times did I say? I said, you cannot put your eggs in the Sheila Jackson Lee basket. Now, it didn't have nothing to do with nothing. I said, first of all, she's widely disliked. Right? Yeah, Michael, I said we're a harvest group. Everybody comes and just dig stuff up. We plant all kind of stuff. They come take everything, the music, the lineage, everything, and say, it's mine now. We're a harvest group. And y'all let this Sheila Jackson Lee start. She harvests this whole reparation. She got a whole new She got a whole bunch of interviews. She got to remake herself. She got all y'all Negroes kissing on her face. Eric Alexander's over there just grab hold to her. And she was kissing all on the jaw like she was her grandmama. And she got a whole new, with this reparation stuff, let me tell you, she got a whole new lease on life. And she got a whole new notoriety. She been on TV and everything. Guess what she did? Harvested. Let me just read this real quick and then we can go. Let me just read this. U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee is running for Houston mayor. Jackson Lee is joining the Houston mayoral race, scrambling in the already crowded field. But she got her name recognition up now thanks to reparations. She's gonna say, she's gonna run around hollering, Sheila Jackson Lee wants to come home to be your mayor for the city of Houston, Jackson Lee said at a church event on Sunday. I will not be able to do it without the support of every one of you. She said, I'm coming home. Now this is, I wanna just say this too. One of the things at this point, because remember what Sheila Jackson Lee said when she made the case that we've been doing this when she took Adolph's work and made it her own like so many other people. She said this has been a 30-year plus journey. Said Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. We had to take a different approach. We had to go one by one to members explaining this does not generate a check. That's how they got support. And they didn't get support. We got all of those. Y'all remember we got all those co-sponsors. But she said we got to go let them know this ain't gonna be money. Now see, what you have done in doing that, Jackson Lee, you very dodo birdish in this, is that you have normalized the idea that reparations is not money. Hey, don't worry, it ain't gonna be no check. We just gonna study some stuff. We just gonna look into some things and come back with a report. Like a book report. That's how we gonna do. Don't worry, yo. Let the head. That's what she did. Now you're normalizing the idea that reparations is not a check. That there's no wealth transfer involved. When actually reparations has to absolutely be a redistribution of wealth because the wealth was plundered, the wealth has to be repaid. But Joe, not us. You put your faith in this lady, and this lady has gotten all the name recognition, and she is off to the races, baby. She is off. She has used all of that, and she's going to use all this reparation stuff to run. I care for you. I deeply care. She going to tell you that she's the mother of reparations. Then she going to tell the white people, it ain't no check in there, no way. You ain't have to be worried about that. We was going to just do a study. She redeemed herself too. Remember I told you she was the most disliked, outside of maybe Ted Cruz, who's just like, everybody just want to punch him in the face apparently. But outside of him, she was one of the most disliked Congress people. But since she done had so many Negroes kissing her jowls, now she looks like she's a mother of something. You allowed this woman to rehabilitate herself using reparations and then run off to be mayor of something. My God. And it really just goes to my last point here, which is that ain't no shortcut. Everybody looking for a shortcut. Guess what? Ain't one. Some of y'all looking for a shortcut through, well, we just gonna, I tell you what we gonna do. We just gonna do something. We're gonna do a task force, but we ain't gonna have no people. And if we put together a bunch of different piles of paperwork and we all file a bunch of different non-profit paperwork, it'll look like it's a bunch of different organizations. Well, really, it's just the 8 of us together, right? Right? It'll look like we all got. You got 8 people. You got 8 people, and you got 8 people. But if we say that we're coordinating with Nasty and we're coordinating with this one and this one and this one, it'll make it look like we got a lot of folk. We'll say it's a whole reparations coalition when really it's the same splinters, it's the same defectors. Well, guess what though? Ain't no cheat code, because what you really have to have when you go into those things and have testimony and you want to influence lawmakers, they got to know that you got some support on the ground. And if you go into that room and it's the same little person from CJEC testifying 2 days in a row and 3 days in a row, they going to know that you ain't got nobody in the room. They going to know this is a whole con. You even turned your hat back the same way both days. That's the same little Negro from yesterday. He didn't even wear no costume. He the same one. They know you don't have no people on the ground. Listen, when I talked to 2 reporters, one from the AP and one from CNN, and they both told me the same thing about y'all. They said you don't have support on the ground. Everybody notices that. Everybody said, well, you know what? I am very surprised they don't have more support. I'm not, because the cheat code, they went in the way of the cheat code. The cheat code says, hey, we can do it. We ain't got a bill, because remember 2019 was when we were all in the news and everything. That was, and then when the reparations in California was came out, if you go look it up, it says $8 California is going to do this reparations thing. Then all of a sudden it takes off and somebody else got it. How you get it? Oh, okay, you cut Antonio off. Okay, that's what happened. You cut $8 off, and then even when you went and did your thing, where you described yourself, you said that you gave in Cobra credit for the first half, and then you said we nasty, we did the second half. You put nasty in place of $8. It's some low down dirty work, but guess what? Ain't no cheat code. So you got to build people. You got to build the movement. It takes time. Some people don't want to take time. You want to go through Sheila Jackson Lee. She ran off. You want to go through putting paperwork. That didn't work. It ain't going to work that way. You got to have a movement. You got to have people. You got to have mass support. And you got to be willing to keep doing the work. And it's hard work. You ain't going to hear me say it ain't. But you got to keep putting the work to do it. And if you don't, guess what? Life's going to just keep teaching you over and over and over again. Ain't no cheat code. And everything that comes out of a cheat code is cheap. It is cheap and plastic. It ain't good. It ain't gonna last. Well, we got Sheila Jackson Lee out here, and we got, well, she gone now. What she gonna do? Who you got out there? Now you gonna start over because you was counting on one woman? We got a bunch of different paperwork that says it's a coalition. Okay, yeah. What you gonna do now? Because everybody can see ain't nobody really there. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Obviously nothing. So the lesson, family, I'm about to go to break, but the lesson, family, is ain't no cheat code. Don't be mad at me. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at your bow-legged mama. Ain't no cheat code. Ain't no cheat code. Ain't no cheat code. Give me a second, fam, to set up the phones in case you choose to call in. Give me 2 minutes or so. I'll set it up, and then we can have a quick conversation if you so choose. That is up to you. Ain't no pressure. All right. Couple seconds, fam. show. It's gonna be a short show. I'm telling you. 734. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, fam. What's going on?
Okay, nothing much. I'm not going to be long. I'm going to leave the line open for people who have been doing more serious work and can articulate themselves. But I really got shocked today because my elders and everything, they, boomers and elders with everything. But today I just got hit with a message that said that my county in Ypsilanti, Washington County, is looking at reparations, and the first thing that hit me is we can't let this turn into California Part 2. So anybody in Michigan, we need to connect and do more, and we can't let this happen again. And that's really all I got to say. But it just that energy that's the energy I need to restart some.
And we about to announce soon. We're about to announce a date for chapter launch. All right, so it's not going to be just soon. We're about to hit y'all with the date, so you all know. I'm not going to reveal anything, but we have set a date for chapters launching. So just know, fam, that we have set a date and we coming soon. So you're gonna have company soon.
Okay. Well, I just want to let you know and everything. You can look at it. It's Washington County. You can look at it, Ann Arbor News or whatever. But yes, Michigan, y'all, we need to get together.
I appreciate it.
But thank you for everything that you do. And thank Tone. Thank everyone. And God bless. And I'm still watching. Let's go. I just have to put that in.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you. And I don't even know how we got here, right? I don't even know. Like I talked about this a lot yesterday, but I don't even know how we got here to where being called African American is viewed as a success in reparations, right? Because two things were supposed to happen. At least two things. I can think of 5. But at least 2 things were supposed to happen. One, we were supposed to, if you were going to do that, you were supposed to use that to leverage the federal, but you didn't give it a number, right, in terms of what that number would look like, right? You didn't give it a number, and you didn't give us a name that would disaggregate us away from everybody else. I don't care what kind of definition you're trying to say. Well, no, it's going to be defined for lineage. Well, you're going to have a hard time really doing that once you put that out there, once people really started paying attention to it, and they're going to say, no, it says African American. Well, no, but what we're really talking about is this. The name is supposed to do something. It's supposed to mean something. And you got away from that, and you let that get away from you for a lot of different reasons, but it is what it is. I don't see how you can count that as some kind of win, especially since the whole ADOS project, the whole reason we called ourselves ADOS is to move away from the name African American. Because when Africans come here and say we're more African than you, they're right. They ain't lying. I don't ever view that as disrespect. I mean, they may mean it disrespectfully, but like when they say we're more African than you, you're right. You grew up on the continent, in the country on the continent, or you have people who were there far sooner than my people were. We need a new name, a new identifier that speaks to who we are. And listen, those of you all who have not put in your letter to the OMB, we are going to on Saturday. You will check the claim to name page on adosfoundation.org. I don't think we've added the link yet, but there will be a link there for you to sign up we're gonna do like a final Q&A for those who haven't submitted their comments to the OMB and are having have some last minute questions. We're going to do something on the 8th, which is Saturday. It'll probably be early afternoon. I know it's Easter, but if you all have time, come through. If you've already submitted your comment and you're fine with that's fine. But if you have some last minute questions or whatever, we're going to do a last minute Q&A. Remember April the 12th is the last day to get your comment into the OMB. Please get your comment in, because I know we trained a lot of people. I know we trained at least 1,000 in February. So please make sure you get your comment in. And if you have some last minute questions, this Saturday, April the 8th, we will have a link for you to register and sign up for a Zoom so that we can answer some more of those questions. Okay? All right. Tell somebody if somebody's asking, like, I got some issues. Let them know. Going down to 513. 513, what's your name, where you calling from, and what's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette.
Hey.
Happy belated birthday, sis. I love you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. I appreciate
for all
you.
your work for the A. Girl, thank you so much for ADOS advocacy and all that you do, because we were so lost without y'all defining who we were and what time it was. I wanted to piggyback in on the Brahmin Indian and the invasion of those people of color who are working specifically against ADOS gains. There is a presidential candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, second-generation Brahmin Indian, pharmaceutical millionaire, etc. But his number one issue is to dismantle affirmative action and things like Brown versus the Board of Education. There is like a whole...
Hey, hold on. You say he want to dismantle affirmative action. What he got against white women? That's the main beneficiary. He got something against white women?
That's right. But the way that he coins it is a dog whistle against black people, because they go on to say that black people are not excelling in affirmative action positions because they weren't qualified, because they were competing with people who were not as educated or as competitive when they get into these other places. But I agree with you. Affirmative action does not help anybody but white women, minority business, etc. That really is for white women, and that's who has been benefiting. But they're unified, sis. You know, I think that's the biggest thing that just makes my stomach hurt, that we cannot unify behind our own justice claim and be in unison. We have to literally fight. We have to fight our own people to love ourselves. That's what I want to say. But, you know, it's not just him. It's Bobby Jindal. It's Nikki Haley. It's Kamala Harris. Here in my city, we got the second-generation Indian mayor, and the Dalai Lama had to come and congratulate him. But he came up off of those little corner stores in our community selling pop and color, red number 40 and all those.
Well, hold on. Slow down what you were saying, though. Slow down what you're saying. You mean because we couldn't get a business loan. Because, all of these things were stuff that we were supposed to own. Like, we could have, had we been allowed to own stuff. Understand, even when you talk about the hair business, how they locked us out. They locked us out of owning businesses in our own communities. Then got those businesses because they were preferred minorities in this country. Then came and said that y'all don't deserve whatever y'all get. Child. Go on, I'm gonna let you finish. I'm sorry.
The government, I don't want to take too much of your time. I just want to let you know how much I love and appreciate you. But that's so real. The government conspired with Korea and China to trademark black hair care products, and it squashed the black hair care market that was ADOS, destroyed it. And nowadays, you can't even really get into that funnel of products unless you go through China, unless you go through Korea. And the United States government made that happen. So, whether it's descendant of slavery, descendant of Jim Crow, descendant of redlining, descendant of the war on drugs, descendant of the loans that Obama got his political name off of, and then bailed out all of the banks. That was on the backs of black Americans. So I just appreciate you for pointing out that we are a specific and distinct ethnic group in this country that was never made whole. If you do the research, even though we didn't get the 40 acres and the mule, we still created a bank, and it got robbed by the United States government.
Yeah, always. We created a lot of banks. It wasn't just one. We created a lot of banks because I went through a few of them on this show, and we didn't get the rescues. When the Great Depression came and everything happened, the banks that we had went under. We had one of the most recent ones that went under with the Great Recession of 2008. We don't get rescued. We don't get rescued because we've never been truly integrated into American wealth. Because that's how you become too big to fail, is that you get truly integrated into American wealth. That never happens with us. Our black banks are just our black banks. Those black banks should be integrated into whiteness because and the whiteness of wealth. Well, we can make the case that wealth should never have been white. That's the truth. But those banks have to be integrated into that. They can't just be our banks. But and then you have people say, well, no, we can't. But you don't want to go with the money. Like, do you want to just be a consumer all your life? Like, what they've really done is just lock us out of the ownership class. Do you want to be part of the ownership class? Do you want to have people who are part of the ownership class or not? Like, that's really the question. And there's a specific way that you go to be about part of the ownership class, and we have been locked out of that. And do you want back in or not? That's the question. So I appreciate it, fam. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all you do, sis. And please, OMB comments, please, y'all, study, be concise, be articulate without being irrational. Good one, sis. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And answer their questions while telling your story. Like, answer their questions while telling your story. Like that, and we just got to get those in before the 12th. We got to get those in. We got to move away from this. If we had done the California, we would have tried to. Either we're going to make it ADOS or we're going to walk away. We're not doubling back down on African American. We're just not doing that. It's just a fool's errand. I am going right now to 301. 301. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette.
Hey.
I'm so glad you revisited this whole Kamala and her identity while she was in Africa, because I used Kamala's whole immigrant story with my daughter and her friends there in their 20s when they were considering voting for her, and everybody in their age group. And, well, when black people, I would say, were just jumping on her bandwagon because she supposedly, was living her like an ADOS life. And I used to tell my daughter, and I would tell other people, I was like, your grandparents, my parents, I said, when they got ready to go to college, they were very lucky, and they had to go to HBCUs. And my mother couldn't even set foot on the college campus in her town because she was black. That was the University of Florida. Unless she was a maid or coming there to clean up. And she used to see people who look like, she used to say she and her friends would see people who look like Kamala's people walking around their campus and walking around their town just free. And they were browner than my mother.
Darker than me. All these people are darker than me. But then, you're black. You got two black parents, so you're black. But these people, they got all the melanin. What you talking about? It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, we got white people in our admixture just because of women who couldn't control their bodies because of slavery, all kinds of stuff. But all of a sudden, no, y'all are black and these people are what? But go on, fam. I'm sorry. Continue your story.
Right. Oh, no. And I'll just be brief. And I was telling, my mother used to tell me that she and her friends would, like, kind of half joke and say, well, I guess if we wrapped our heads up and maybe talk like them, maybe we could get on the campus. Because, they knew that they didn't have that privilege of not only getting that education, just simply stepping foot on that campus. And when she did go to college, she went to school in Tallahassee, where there was another white college. She went to FAMU, and there was Florida State across town. She said it was the same thing. She's like, there were these brown people. She called them brown. She's like, they were brown people who were browner than her, who got to go everywhere and anywhere around Tallahassee. They couldn't even go. So, and this was in 1958, ironically, when Kamala's mother, because my mother graduated high school in 1958, and they had to go to an HBCU. They couldn't go to Florida State. They couldn't go to University of Florida. They had to go to a black, either there or go to Bethune-Cookman. So it was just when I used that story to tell my daughter and some of my friends who had been brainwashed by Kamala, I was like, our parents had to go to HBCUs if they were fortunate enough to go to school. I said, and on top of that, I was telling my friends, I said, our grandparents didn't go, they weren't government officials, and they weren't, these high-ranking people. I said, they were maids and cooks. One of my friends' grandfather was a Pullman porter. I was like, they were lucky that they could put food and shelter, on the table for their families. Kamala's not us. And I used to tell people that, and they, rather than listen, a lot of people would be like, well, you just don't understand. But thankfully, my daughter and her friends got it. They saw that Kamala was not them.
Good.
That's most important. They're young, so they understood.
That's a good thing.
But I just wanted to just share that and just just thank you again, and maybe as time goes on, people will understand that Kamala is not us. She just isn't.
I appreciate it. I appreciate
she's
it.
Privileged, a privileged immigrant.
Yeah, and you come from a family of affluent immigrants. That's just what it is. And I think people have to just understand that there have been whole articles written now about how the Brahmin come here and discriminate by caste against other Indians who come here, right? Because they understand that, hey, we come from the wealthy caste, and it's kind of like, what are you even doing in America? And so somebody committed suicide, I think. I saw a story about, and who just because of that sort of thing. So it's just like, this is an affluent caste, and somehow we as ADOS who come from slavery think that we're going to, we lock up with that caste, so we have some kind of solidarity with that caste because we're ADOS. And it's just like, there's not a natural solidarity there. It just doesn't exist. So I thank you, fam. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you.
You have a good one.
Right, bye.
Yeah, each one teach one, child. That's what it's just got to be. Going to 609, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, it's Tiana calling from San Diego by way of Atlantic City. How are you tonight?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I had a couple of topics I wanted to get your opinion on. So the first one was, what's your thought on the same day as the 55th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination by way of our government, they decided to announce the indictment for Trump?
I don't think this country does anything. I don't think this country does anything by mistake. I just don't. I even they. God, remember they named that? What was that helicopter that they named after the Native American chief? What was it? The Geronimo?
The Apache.
Apache. Yeah, I don't think they do anything by mistake, and I just feel like if you're gonna have to give it a date, why not give it a date where we don't have to remember that on this day that America slaughtered like a non-violent leader. Like, we don't want to have to. Why do that? If there's a date that we can kind of drop that on, well, we don't have to really discuss injustice in this country and assassinations for people who are fighting for freedom. Let's just do it on that day. So I don't think anything is happenstance when it comes to America. I don't. Propaganda is just too efficient in this country.
I agree. Thank you. And the second thing I wanted to ask your opinion on was, did you hear about Charlie Kirk trying to rile up his Turning Point USA base about as far as the OMB letters, trying to get them, I guess, to counteract what we're trying to do?
But I've seen a lot of people get active lately now. I didn't see him.
A lot.
But I have seen a lot of people.
Yeah, he has a whole video. I think I posted it on my Twitter. I'll put it in your inbox after the show.
Or tag, put it, DM me or tag me. DM me or tag me. Oh, is that right? But listen, I've been to.
So if the blacks are going to get paid, does that mean the slave owners are going to get paid and the people that fought in the Civil War? Like, oh, come on.
But the people who engaged in flesh trade, like, some of them already got paid, by the way. But like, why would somebody who fought in the war?
And that's what I said.
Like, you don't get paid. Like, what do you get paid? People who fought in Vietnam, the people who fought in World War I, World War II. Some of them got GI Bill. We didn't get that. So, but like, why would you think there's a debt owed to you because you fought in a war to save the Union? I don't understand it. And Confederates should have paid. They should have been paid. They should have had to pay reparations to the state. So it's very interesting. Yep. I told people though, like, listen, all this fighting that y'all are doing and running away and giving ADOS a new name with all the same stuff. Like, listen, the real fight's coming and y'all playing. So what do we have? What will we have for this all this little goofing off that everybody's been doing? Nothing. Real fight's coming though. Hope everybody got their good armor on, because it ain't about to be play time.
I know that's right. Well, thank you so much, Yvette. I just wanted to make sure you were aware, because I think what some of the white supremacist base are doing is they're trying to rile up their own base to try to counteract what we're doing. So I just want everybody to be aware so that we're prepared to know how to counteract.
Well, I appreciate it, because I wasn't aware. So I appreciate you making me aware, because I was not aware. I was not aware, John. So I thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to send it to your inbox on Twitter so you can see it, the clip.
Thank you. I appreciate you. What they say, like,
no, thank you for everything you do.
Like they say in church, God, I thank you. You know what? Why, thank you. No, because I did not know.
I wanted to say to you, man, you missed your call in being a comedian. You be giving us political education, but you're hilarious.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate it. I feel like you
Thank you so much, fam.
I appreciate I feel like you
Have a
gotta
good
have
night.
fun. You too. You have a good one. I feel like you gotta have some kind of fun or whatever you do. You gotta find joy in whatever it is you're doing. You could be facing down a hail of bullets. You better find some kind of joy as you get out of there or fight back or whatever you're doing. You better don't just if you don't have some kind of joy. Ooh, we all kind of bad feelings will stick on you. You don't want that stuff to stick on you. But I did not know that was. I have seen a lot all of a sudden. Though I have seen a lot of white people all of a sudden start just talking about ADOS specifically and the OMB, and I think they're finally realizing what's happening. And so that's one more reason why you got to get your letters in, fam. We got to get our letters in. Like these people already gonna bring the fight, but we don't wanna have them bring the fight and like we get caught flat-footed. Well, we just really didn't do enough. Get your letter into the OMB. If you have questions, again, April the 8th, that's Saturday afternoon. We will put a link up, and I'll probably send it out on Twitter, something like that. So you can come in and do a Q&A, and if you have any questions, you ain't sent it in because it's due on the 12th. If you haven't sent it in, you have any questions, we'll take care of that, okay? We'll answer those questions so you can get if you haven't sent it in already. 360, I'm coming to you. You're going to be my last caller. What's going on, 360?
Hey, Vet, this is AJ from North Carolina.
What's going on, AJ?
Not much. Great show, as always. Great show. Regarding the OMB, I'm so glad that you are doing the 8th for the questions and posting the link up because I attended training myself, and we are doing the work. I am doing the work that I, let other people know, and I would definitely allow it to be kind of more streamlined so they can kind of get in to really hear it one more time before submitting everything. So that's definitely great. But I wanted to get, with it being your comments on with it being 2023 and so many kind of candidates, and I want to tie it in the show after you give your thoughts. But with all these candidates coming up with election season coming, what should be the local posture as we begin to, as our local election director boards are kind of reaching out, sending out mailers? What should our posture be as ADOS in response to candidates soliciting our vote?
Well, I think you can. I think support for national reparations, federal reparations, has to be on there, and we'll have a plan of action when chapters roll out. But I also think that you have to, like, if you're in doubt, I think the ADOSFoundation.org Black Agenda is a good way to start. And I think you have to assess like what your community needs, because you don't know what your particular community needs in terms of resources. You're going to have a really hard time deciding what you need to ask this person for, right? So you have to do a basic assessment of like budgets and look at where budgets have been cut, and look at where that funding has went, and then decide, hey, what are the priorities here? What do we need? I mean, you could be living somewhere where the problem is policing. You could be living somewhere where the problem is infrastructure, right? There are a lot of varieties of what happens in ADOS life, whether it's South Carolina, whether it's North Carolina, whether you're in ADOS in New Jersey, or Michigan. And I think you have to and there are some similarities, especially across the South, but you have to and especially across the South, we have infrastructure, all kinds of problems, especially with the tornado that ripped through Mississippi. That's a different priority than like a lot of other states would have in terms of we need funding. We need expedited funding. We need housing, and we still got to figure out how we, as other ADOS, can help our ADOS in Mississippi and elsewhere, because that was a horrific tornado that went through there. I know one went through Arkansas too, but I know like it wiped out a town, a lot of a town that was mostly ADOS. So that's a different priority than, let's say, you may have if you just go right down. If you're in Georgia, right? That's a different kind of priority. And so I think one of the things that we have to focus on when chapters launch too is reading and interpreting budgets and learning how to make an ask based on the budget that you're looking at. I remember when Jacory was telling us how when the money came down from from Biden, they were able to get money for homelessness. Most of the homeless are ADOS, and they were able to get money for homelessness that was going somewhere else. So what we'll be looking at too is how to divert funding that's not really needed, that's going to places that we don't need it to go, that won't benefit us, and bringing that funding back here on a local level. Now, on a national level, of course, we are in favor of a black agenda, but we're also in favor of reparations. That's our cornerstone, right? Reparations is the cornerstone. But on a local level, we'll be talking about how to bring funding back, the funding that we need, and how to do that as power players in politics, as opposed to just people who show up and vote. You know, voting is something that we all do, but you have to be a more informed public. You know, if you're going to do it right. You know, Randall Robinson recently passed, and you know, I have a lot of disagreements with him on terms of reparations and in terms of being lost because of Africa. But one of the things I do agree with that he said is that we have to stop just thinking that politics is about certain rituals, right? Politics is about you have to just kind of be a more informed person in general in terms of how you live your life. And what I have always talked about in this show is about having a culture of politics, a culture of political discussion. And so I think we'll get there. I think but that's what you have to focus on.
Absolutely. And for those of us that live in states that require registering designation prior to voting, what is the ADOS? And would it be Democrat, Independent?
Well, you have to. Well, I think you have to ask yourself, right? If you live in an area that tends to elect a Democrat, right? Like you're required to pick a party, and the party that's normally picked is a Democrat, right? What side do you think you pick? Like, I live in an area where unless there's some type of hailstorm in an apocalyptic way, they're going to pick a Democrat, right? So, what sense would it make for me to go and be a Republican when a Republican hasn't gotten elected here in decades, right? So it's not about, oh, you trying to be a part of the Democratic Party. No, it's the fact that I know that like the people where I am, they're going to select somebody within the Democratic Party, right? That's what's going to happen. And the Republican Party is they just been saying wild stuff too. But regardless of even if they were better, like this, you're going to get a Democrat. They're going to be a list of Democrats, and you're going to get one of them. Why would I register in this area as a Republican? Now, you have to look at your area. Some people have more split areas, and it's just like, well, what is he saying? Is the Republican talking good or whatever? Like, what is he saying? Is he saying something different than him? Do we have a libertarian being where he don't like prisons and he don't like none of? But like a lot of times we live in places where you know it's a foregone conclusion that the people around you, the voters, are going to elect Democrat. Then the question is, are you going to hold that Democrat accountable and tell that Democrat what you want and what you're willing to vote for and against, right? Because you have to tell them too, like, listen, I'm just not going to show up and rubber stamp something. That's what I'm not going to do. There's a bunch of choices here. It's you and 4 more Democrats. I can pick one, and I don't like what you were saying. That's what you have to do. But it all, who you choose and whether or not you choose to go with a Democrat or whether or not you say, hey, I'm putting my eggs in a Republican basket, depends on where you live. But we live in a lot of places that are like 80% Democrat. I don't see those places flipping. And that's not me saying, oh, I love Democrats. I don't. That's not me saying that. That's just saying you have to deal with the reality of wherever you live.
And I completely agree with you. I think the data supports that overwhelmingly our group is the base of the Democratic Party, and it's time to make an ask. So I appreciate you definitely clearing that up. Last thing on the Sheila Jackson Lee coming home to be the mayor, and I'll let you answer this one today, and I'm gone. Always foot on the gas. Do you think this is the signal, the almost like the decadent veil signal for celebrities, that it's over for her in politics?
No.
And thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
I ain't got to listen to that.
Okay. No, I don't think it's over. I mean, politicians never want to leave. Anyway, that's just the thing, too. But I don't think it's over. I think she wants to do something different. I think she wants to be the queen of the town. And it's hard to do that with 400, well, however many, however. But because it's just like it's like 400. You got the Senate, 100 of them, and you got like it's just hard. And the in terms of who is the more powerful, Senate's more powerful, far more powerful than the House, right? So I think she wants to be a place where she's more of a king of the hill. So I don't think she's done with politics. I think she's done. I think she wants to be done with this variety of politics. If you're mayor of something, you're mayor. You ain't gotta be one of many. You mayor. They gonna go. They come to the. They had gotta go see the mayor. It's a bunch of money in that too, man. It's a bunch of money in that. It's a bunch of money. It's a bunch of contracts and stuff. Ooh, it's a lot of money in that. So I don't think she know what they're being done. Anyway, family. Let me just say I appreciate y'all. We're at an hour and 24 minutes, and we about to get out of here. Like I said, do not forget your OMB comments are due April the 12th. Also, do not forget we will tweet it, post it, but on April the 8th we will be doing. That's a Saturday on early in the afternoon. We'll try to get it done or get it in there before you all go out and you're out with the kids picking up what is it, Easter this Sunday. We're picking up their Easter outfits and little shiny shoes. We'll try to get it in. So if you got to go do all that stuff, we won't interrupt that. So we'll try to pick a time so when you can just come in and do it, and then you can go out and you can go get your hair cut and get your hair fried and dyed and laid to the side like the old people say. You can do everything that you got to do. If you're a guy, you can go get your fresh line. Get it faded out. So we'll do all that. That's going to be April the 8th. It's going to be out on the afternoon. We'll tweet it out and I'll post it to where you can log in, log up, child. I'm a lumberjack. Like where you can sign up for the Zoom. So do not forget, please take care of that. That is absolutely important that you get that comment to the OMB. So fam, that is it for me for now. Please keep it easy breezy. Don't bother nobody. Don't let nobody bother you. Patreon, I will see you all tomorrow night. And I'll probably be a little lazy tomorrow night. I'll be fasted all day tomorrow, so I can't eat all day. So I'll probably be tired. I'll come in like this. Anyway, I'll see y'all, fam. I appreciate y'all. Please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. YouTube, as always, is every Wednesday. Patreon is every Monday and Thursday. See y'all next time. Don't bother nobody. Mind your business. Finish your letter. All right, fam.